for the moment. Now, they're anti-Euro. They want a leaner Brussels and no more transfer of powers. Sound familiar? Well, a new German Eurosceptic party, the Alternative for Germany, had 7 MEPs elected last week and want to sit with David Cameron's Conservatives in the European Parliament. Trouble is that David Cameron needs to keep German Chancellor Angela Merkel on side if he's going to achieve anything in his renegotiation. And this new German Eurosceptic party is Angela Merkel's sworn political enemy. Well, in our Berlin studio is an MEP from Alternative for Germany, Beatrix von Storch. Welcome to the programme. Beatrix, tell us the main campaigning points of your party.
Well, for all of the campaign, what we were stressing is that we want to put reforms on the European Union. We want to strengthen the European realistic policy. And to bring it to one point, we're heading for a European Union as a federation of sovereign states, of sovereign democracies, and we oppose strongly the idea of having a federal state, a European Union as a federal state. I think this is the main point we're making, and this is our main political goal. This is what the Alternative for Germany has been founded for. And this will be our responsibility to stress this issue in the European Parliament.
So, perfect partners for the British Conservative Party?
I guess so, yes. I think we are highly compatible with the British Conservatives, as they want to put reforms on the European Union also, and so I would call ourselves the natural allies for the Tory party and for the ECR group, who's representing these ideas of reformation of the European Union within the Parliament.
OK, but do you accept that you are the sworn political enemy of the Chancellor Angela Merkel?
Well, I think at the moment we're opposing in one very central point, and this is what we want to have a deep reform on the European Union and on the European institutions. We don't want to have the European Union, as I said, as a federal state, and this is what is pushed forward from our Chancellor Merkel and from, by the way, all the other German parties also. And so this means that we have got to center a very important point where we are opposing each other.
OK,
right. Yeah,
well,
that's true.
Just hold on one moment, John Micklethwaite. So this would be ideal, wouldn't it, for the Conservative Party? They could be in the same group together.
It would be wonderful, except everyone in Europe knows that the single person who decides everything in Europe, or has the greatest negative power, is Mrs. Merkel. You go and see any European leader at the moment. I think she has greater power than any person has had in Europe for a very, very long time. And it would mildly annoy her, to put it mildly.
And do you think then David Cameron won't entertain the idea of getting into bed with the Alternative for Germany party?
I think he will entertain the idea because, as we've heard, there's such a huge array of similar objectives. That could almost have been a Conservative speaking, which is a terrible thing to say about anyone. But anyway, that would have sounded very, very similar. But I think there is this basic barrier that if he wants anything to happen in Europe, then he's got to deal with Mrs. Merkel. Right,
and that's the realistic part of this whole political discussion. As far as David Cameron and the Conservative Party is concerned, Beatrix, it's Angela Merkel who is far more important than you.
Well, if you look to the European Parliament and if you want to strengthen a constructive way of reforms even within the Parliament, we need a strong group who's supporting this idea, and so that means we need a strong, it would be good to have a strong ECR.
Okay, well,
and I think we would be good members to do so, and I think finally it's going to be the members of the European Parliament who are voting us in to the group, and then it would be far more likely that we have a constructive discussion going on about the reformation of the system. And I think it would be a good sign to the people also that the European Parliament is taking a responsible position within this discussion. And I think it would be a brilliant idea to have German members to address these points from the floor of Brussels and Strasbourg.
Right, what do you think about David Cameron's plan for the in-out referendum, Britain's relationship with the EU?
Well, I think we are also very much supporting the idea of the self-determination of the people. So I think it's always a good idea to ask the people themselves, what do they want? We want even in Germany to have these questions put to the people, because the Parliament is not able from our constitution to decide about giving up our sovereignty to whomever, or to the European Union or to some other institutions. This is not what the Parliament has been voted for. They are not allowed to pass away our sovereignty. So it's always a very good point to ask the people to participate in the political process.
Okay, well, now you've been described as a German Eurosceptic party. What do you think of UKIP, the UK Independence Party?
Well, I think in general ideas they're heading towards the same directions. They want to have Great Britain out of the European Union, and from the German taxpayers' point of view, that's not good for us. But it's in the end, I think it's good to ask the people, and this is what UKIP is heading for, also to have a referendum on this idea. And if the outcome will be that Great Britain leave the European Union, well, that would be sad. That would be sad. We're not. Well, that would be not a wish, of course.
All right.
But if the people decide likewise, that's the way it is.
Okay. Well,
and
I think
to strengthen democracy, that's always good.
All right. I'm just going to pause you there for a moment. Jacob Rees-Mogg, Conservative MP, battled through the traffic, made it in the end. Thank you for joining us. We've just been hearing from the Alternative for Germany party, Beatrix von Storch, setting out really a conservative agenda in terms of reform of relationship with Europe. So are you two going to join forces?
Well, I think there's a difference between what goes on in the European Parliament and what goes on outside it. In the European Parliament, the Conservatives cannot be within the European People's Party, which is an outright federalist party that believes that the European Union is a fantastic success.
Right, that's Angela Merkel's CDU party, but this party hasn't decided.
The Alternative for Deutschland is a much more attractive partner for the Conservatives in the context of the European Parliament. And it's therefore sensible for David Cameron to maintain very friendly relations with Angela Merkel, which is crucial to his getting his way in the European Union, to the extent that Britain ever gets her way. But it's also sensible in the context of the alliances you need within the European Parliament for the Conservative group to align with the Alternative for Deutschland, because it's as close to us as you get in German politics in our view of Europe.
But you can't afford to alienate Angela Merkel in any way, as you have set out. By making friends with this lady here in Berlin, the Alternative for Deutschland party, you're going to do exactly that.
I don't think that's right. I think we don't have any perpetual allies. We have a British interest, which we must work towards, and that means the Prime Minister has to... Mrs Merkel got very upset when we left the European People's Party, but is now David Cameron's best friend in Europe. That the realities of high-level politics...
David Cameron's best friend in Europe?
I think in some way, yes. I think she's... What is Jacob's right? She has a much higher respect for him than she did then. But the thing which is definitely true is that she would be equally cross, I think, more so, particularly at a time when she's trying to deliver a lot of things for Britain if they did move into that grouping.
Mrs Merkel supported Mr Sarkozy for the presidency of France. Indeed, at one point was even going to go and campaign for him. Then she didn't. Now she has to get on with Monsieur Hollande. That's the way international politics work. It is the job of international leaders to get on with each other to achieve their own national interests.
David Cameron's got to achieve rather a lot in his renegotiation, because your parliamentary colleagues are putting an awful lot of pressure on him to come back with something tangible ahead of 2015 election. He needs Angela Merkel to deliver that.
Well, it's got to be a proper renegotiation, but the strongest point to get a good renegotiation is to say if we don't get what we want, we will leave. That's our absolute winner negotiating card, not the here today, gone tomorrow support of Mrs Merkel, which hasn't been robust over Mr Juncker, has it?
Well, now, when we come to Jean-Claude Juncker, I mean, there doesn't seem to be an alternative here. Angela Merkel has said publicly she backs him for the Commission President. We know what both Beatrix von Storch's party and what the Conservatives think about him as a federalist. They don't want him.
I think the whole thing is a farce. You have Juncker, who may or may not want this job, may prefer to have the President of the Council, being backed by Mrs Merkel, who all informed insiders suggest does not want him for the job, because she has got trapped by German public opinion and by giving her word previously. And there is an element whereby I think the Germans are desperately hoping, actually, that some kind of blocking coalition sort of emerges. And I would, in the end, I think, if you'd asked me at the weekend, I probably would have bet that somebody like Pascal Lamy, or someone who is at least slightly more friendly to the British point of view, might end up as the Commission President. All
right. Beatrix von Storch, just before we let you go, who do you want to see as Commission President?
Well, I think we have got new member states from Central and Eastern Europe, and they have got also many talents to maybe implement the new spirit of Europe.
Okay.
And it's pretty clear that we will not support Juncker, but maybe we would come up with a EU Commission President from the centre or Eastern Europe, and why not have, for example, Richard Sulik do the job? I think he has proven already that he is a responsible person, and he would be a new face. Juncker is a representation of the old Europe, and Richard Sulik, for example, would be a face for the new spirit and for the importance of the Central and Eastern Europe states for Europe. I think we should think about something like that.
OK. Beatrix in Berlin, thank you very much. You're staying with us, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now